Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to this week's 10-Minute Torah. Thank you for your feedback last week. I've made sure to up the volume on my microphone, and I think you'll hear it pretty good this week. So thank you again for the feedback. And it's nice. It means that some people are watching. So, and thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. And, if you have any other feedback regarding my discussions, my Devar Torah, always enjoy hearing back from you. First of all, let's give a shout out to Lila Weinstein on her wonderful bat mitzvah this weekend. It was a little different, which is good. I mean, we want to make a bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah special. This is something that a kid who is now becoming an adult is going to remember for the rest of their life. And I've mentioned this before, but let's revisit this. B'nai mitzvah is not an easy task. It is a very important and it's a very trying rite of passage. You have to learn a new language that is very much unlike English in that it is read right to left. The Aleph Bet, the letters are different. The construction of the language is different in that there are markings around the letters as to not only how to enunciate the word, but also how to chant it. And that's another thing. Those are collectively called nikud marks. But we are, of course, referring to the vowels and the cantillations. The vowels, how to enunciate the letters, and, of course, the cantillations, how to chant. Now, those vowels are very important. We see a word, mem, lamed, chet. So that's the equivalent of an M, an L, and a letter that has no equivalent in English. It's a ch. It's kind of a k, but a very soft ch, right? And when you see those letters by themselves, it can mean different things. Melech means ruled or king. Malach, same exact spelling, different vowels, means ruled. So that's why it's very important to have those, what we call in a way, training wheels. These were set into the Torah by a group of anonymous scholars many years ago called the Masoretes. And they, after the destruction of the Second Temple, wanted to preserve the accuracy of Torah and, of course, the prophets and the writings, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. So this way, every single Torah in the world, all over, different countries, is read exactly the same. It's the same Torah, it's the same prophets, it's the same writings, it's the same Tanakh, the same Hebrew scriptures. By the way, Tanakh is an anagram for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, Tanakh. See? And some of you that are taking our Hebrew reading class, you'll be able to see that in a few weeks as we progress through our Aleph Bet. And once again, Lila, who has done a lot of studying, and she put her own personality into was an amazing bat mitzvah, and it was it was an honor to watch her become an adult in the eyes of Judaism. It also kind of brings up a very sore point, and I've had this discussion or debate, or in some cases an argument, as to whether girls should be bat mitzvahed. I've always challenged somebody to show me where in the Torah or any other part of the Hebrew scripture it says that women or girls cannot be bat mitzvah. There's nothing. It's kind of a rabbinic mandate. Now, women are more spiritually evolved than men are. You will see in parts of the Torah where women actually save men. And when we get into Numbers, when we get into the revolt of Korach, we see a person named there whose wife, and this is kind of the Midrash, basically suggested him that he had nothing to gain from joining in on this rebellion and just about everything to lose. But women are more spiritually evolved than men because they can give birth. They're closer to God. They create life. And a woman's is responsible. We've heard a woman's place is in the home, but in Judaism, that's a description of honor. Women are charged with the task of bringing the children up with the social and moral values that are incumbent on a very progressive and a very positive and well-functioning and efficient society. So this is why they are excused from all the positive commandments. So All right, so we've digressed a little bit because of the bat mitzvah, but let's get back on track with this week's portion, Noah. Second portion of the Torah, and this year we are in the triennial cycle, so we're reading the end. And the end of this particular portion is the Tower of Babel, or Babel, from where we get the word to Babel, because these people were building a tower, some say to wage war with God. And this is after, it's about 4 or 5, it's not even, it's 3 generations after Noah, because Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Japheth, and Shem. And Shem, maybe some of you will recognize the name as Semites, right? That's from whom we are that's from whom we are descended, from Shem. So Nimrod was the grandson of Ham, and he was a mighty warrior. Now the implications is that the after the incident with the flood, God said to Noah that man can now eat animals. We now could eat any animals. Kashrut is not there yet. But man had previously been vegetarian, and now we can eat animals. And the story is that Nimrod, who was Noah's grandson, now had a taste for blood. And he enjoyed killing people too. He was a mighty warrior, a hunter. He was the first king, and some say that he took over the cities by might, by force. So now he led the project to build a Tower of Babel. And this year, I'm going to be looking at the Eitz Chaim Chumash. This was intended as sort of an update of the Sansino Chumash that we use in our synagogue, the Eitz Chaim. It's got some good commentary, and for me, last year, 5781, I studied out of the Sansino and of the Art Scroll Chumash. I always like to vary because sometimes in the different Chumashim, you will see different commentaries. So in this particular uh, Chumash, in this particular Torah commentary, we talk about Nimrod. He again was the grandson of Noah, and he was a mighty hunter, and he ruled an area that was known as Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, I believe, means something like Middle Earth. Meso means middle. It talks about the various cultures that he ruled over. And the Eitz Chaim makes the point that he and his cohorts preferred technology over humanity. They make the point that when people are city dwellers, you go to a city and what do you see? A lot of people crowded into a smaller area. Now, this, of course, the advantage is that there's commerce, there's more interaction. But the problem is that there's so many people clung together that people become anonymous. People don't care about people the way they do in the rural areas, right, where you have a more maybe not concentrated population, but since there's fewer people, you know your neighbors a little bit better, and you seem to care about them more. So what these people were doing, were using technology to build these towers, and the towers are seen as sort of projections of their own ego, to put it in psychological terms. The problem, and we've talked about this before, is that whenever a brick fell down to earth and crumbled, people are like, oh my gosh, it's going to take more time. We got to get another brick. When a person died, it didn't matter as much. So their concern with humanity was a lot less than their concern for technology. So God came down. Very important word, came down. We talk about this. We talk about how this was in the lowlands. It was down. Just like Sodom and Gomorrah were down near the lower elevations, whereas Abraham, Moses, they all go to mountains. We have Psalms that talk about mountains. Psalm 121, from the mountain I gaze, because it's the physical height represents a spiritual height. So these people were in the lowlands. They were building these towers, to make a monument to their lofty egos. And God came down and saw that people didn't care, and he confounded their speech. Now, it's not necessarily in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. The Art Scroll Chumash makes the point of saying that they were looking to the Midrash, that they were looking to wage war with God, where they wanted to touch the gods because these were pagans, right? They wanted to conquer their gods. And again, because of their lack of caring, because of their lofty aspirations that just set aside humanity for technology, God confounded their speech. So now they were talking different languages. They couldn't understand each other. And we see some of these speeches. We see the similarities between Hebrew and Aramaean and some of the other ancient languages. In fact, my understanding is that Hebrew, up until very recently, was a holy language, and the common language was Aramaean. That's how people tended to communicate with each other. So God confounded their speech, their languages. We now have 70 nations speaking 70 different languages. And the Tower of Babel is no more. And we use the word Babel, for somebody who's speaking gibberish. Finally, I want to make this point. The Parashat ends with the birth of Abraham and how Abraham and Sarah were married. And at this point, they're known as Abram and Sarai. So next week, we'll be talking Lech Lecha as Abraham, as we are more introduced. We get to know Abraham a little bit more and his trials and how, because of him, we now have a beautiful religion. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll be singing services.